Hello friends! Today we are gonna create 3 different JavaScript projects that will help you to understand JavaScript basics. The first one will be this slider example. We can move the slider using these arrows and these buttons. Then we are gonna create a quiz application. We will choose an answer for each question, and at the end of the game we will display this result page. And finally, we are gonna create a product page where we can filter data using a search input, these categories, and this price range. They all are real-world projects that include everything you need to know about JavaScript basics: loops, event listeners, DOM manipulation, array methods, and more. And after that, we will deploy our projects using Hostinger. As you know, Black Friday is approaching and Hostinger offers an 80% discount for premium hosting. You can deploy 100 websites, you will get unlimited bandwidth, a free domain, and SSL certificate at this price. If you use the link in the description below and Lama Dev coupon code here, you will get an extra discount. And remember, this is a limited time offer. Don't miss the greatest discount of the year. After purchasing, you are gonna redirect it to Hostinger panel. Let's claim our free domain. After the registration, we are ready to set up our hosting. It shows everything step by step. We'll create our own websites. Let's choose the domain. And that's all. It's gonna take a while, and after that you will see your hosting panel. This panel is really user-friendly. You can manage your emails, domains, files, you can create a database, and other settings. And in this tutorial, we are gonna create different subdomains for each project, and we will deploy them using this file manager. So if you are ready, let's get started. Okay, if you created a new folder, let's create our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. I will say slider.html, CSS, and JavaScript. So I will come here and I will just say doc and tab. As you can see, our HTML document is ready. Right now I'm gonna import this CSS and JavaScript file. To do that, I will say link and slider.css. Let's give a title for our project. I will say slider project. Let's write here hello and my JavaScript. I'm gonna say source and import my JavaScript file here. Let's write here something. It works. Let's open up our website, right click and open with Live Server. If you don't have this extension, you can open up Extensions tab, right here, Live Server. As you can see, we are going to be using this extension, and after that you can hot reload your HTML files. Let me close this menu and I will say Live Server, and as you can see, it's here. If I open up my console, as you can see, it works. So let's give a background here and center my elements. To do that, we can use our body tag. I will say background color is going to be this purple color. And to center everything, I'm going to be using flexbox. I will say display flex, align item center, justify content center. Basically, it centers vertically and it centers horizontally. Like that. Perfect. So let's see what we are going to have. As you can see, we are going to have a container here, which includes every element, those arrows, images, and those buttons. And in this container, we are going to have 2 sections. First one will be this top section, arrows and images, and second one will be those buttons. let's do that. I will delete here and I will say a container. We are going to have a top section and bottom. And in this top section, we will have this arrow, this images frame, which includes our slider and other arrow here. Let's say image. I'm going to open up my menu and create here an image folder. And inside this folder, I'm going to drag and drop my arrow PNG. As you can see, we are going to be using this image. It's going to be exactly the same image. We are just going to give a rotation for this right one. So let's use it. I will say image arrow.png. Of course, I'm going to give a class name. Let's say arrow. And this one will be left arrow. And one more is going to be right. And in the middle, we are going to have our slider frame. I'm going to close this sidebar. Let's see, actually. As you can see here, I'm going to create my slider div, and inside we are going to have our images. But for now, let's make this div horizontal and center them. And we can reduce this image size. Let's open up CSS. I will say top. Of course, we are going to have a container here, but we are going to handle this later. Let's say display flex. As you can see, they are horizontal. I can center this vertically. Align item center. Perfect. And I can give a space between them. Let's say 50 pixels. Okay, awesome. And for those images, let's say arrow. Height will be a little bit lower, like that. And we can click them. So I will say cursor pointer. Like this. Let's rotate this right one. I'm going to be using transform, rotate, and 180 degrees. Okay, it's that easy. Right now, I can create my images. I will just copy and paste them inside this slider. As you can see, our source will be paxas.com, some random images, and class name will be image. Let's see. Okay, they are here, but they are too big. In our example, as you can see, we have a certain width and height for this frame. Let's give that. I will say frame, 800 pixels, 500 pixels. It really doesn't matter. You can give whatever you want. And I will say overflow hidden. We cannot see other images right now. That's because they are overflowed and we hide them. But as you realize, our image looks a little bit weird. Let's resize them also. I will say image. Width will be 100%, height will be 100%, like that. And I will say object with cover, and it's gonna cover all our frame here. And as you can see, it looks much better. Okay, we are gonna handle our slider, but before, let's create those divs here. I will say just div. I'm creating them like that, but after giving a style, I'm gonna delete them. That's because we are gonna be using JavaScript, and I'm gonna show you how to create any HTML element using JavaScript. Okay, actually, let's give a class name for them. I will say class and button. Let's copy this and come here. I will give height and width, and I'm gonna make them circle. So border radius will be 50%, and I'm gonna give a border, 1 pixel, solid, and white. Let's check, like that. You already know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make this horizontal. Basically, I will be using display flex, and I'm gonna give gap between them. Okay, awesome. So what I want to do is to center this bottom and top. It's gonna be somewhere here, and I'm gonna give a space between them. Again, we can use display flex, but this time it's gonna be vertical. To do that, we are gonna be using flex direction. It's gonna be column. If I say align item center, as you can see, it's centered. And let's give gap, and it's gonna be 50 pixels. Okay, our design is ready. Let's get started with our JavaScript. I'm gonna delete here, and firstly, I should select my items. Actually, let's delete those buttons, as I said. We are gonna create them here. And what I'm gonna do, basically, I need these left and right arrows. And when I click them, we are gonna move this slider on the x-axis. So how we are gonna choose our elements? It's really easy. I will say const left. We are gonna be using document and query selector. So I'm gonna give my class name left, and I will do the same thing for right side and my slider. Okay, let's test. When I click on this right button, I want to write something on the console. To do that, we are going to be using event listener, and our event will be a click event. And I'm going to create here a function. Basically, I will say whenever you click on this right button, write here something. Clicked. I'm going to open up my console. I will click, and as you can see, perfect, it works. So instead of console log, I just want to move this slider. I'm going to delete here, and I'm going to choose my slider div, and I'm going to change its style. And I'm going to give a transform effect, and it's going to be translate X. That's because we are going to move this on the x-axis. So let's test it. I will just say minus 500 pixels, for example. Of course, we are going to change it. I will click. Oops, it's going to be transform. And as you can see, it's moving. But we cannot see other images. That's because they are not horizontal. Let's fix that. After this frame, I will say slider div, and it's going to be display flex. Like that, as you can see, other image. So instead of this 500 pixels, let's make this dynamic. As you remember, our image width is 800 pixels. So if I write here 800, I will click, as you can see, second image. And for the third one, it's going to be 1600. I will click, perfect. And for the last image, it's going to be 2400. Like that. So let's think what kind of logic we are going to use. First click, second click, and third click. It's really simple, actually. It equals 800 multiplied by 1. And this one, 2. And this one, 3. So we are gonna need those numbers, basically, for each click. Of course, if we have other images, we are just gonna increase this number. And to reach those numbers, we can use our slider length. We can create a slide number. Let's say slide number, and at the beginning it's gonna be 1. It's gonna show the first image. And whenever I click on this button, I'm gonna increase this slide number. And for the first image, I can use this slide number. I'm gonna use here a JavaScript. To do that, we are gonna be using $sign and curly parentheses. And I will say use slide number and multiply by 800. And after each click, I'm gonna increase this slide number. Let's see. I will click, as you can see, third and last one. It's that easy. But there's a problem here. If I click one more, as you can see, it's still moving. But in our example, this is the last image. If I click, it turns back to the first image. So we can create here a logic. I will say, if slide number is smaller than our image's length, remember we have 4 images, so let's choose them. Their class names are image. I will say images, and to choose all our images, I will write here query selector all. Basically, if you have multiple elements, like in our example, as you can see, we have 4 elements, you are going to be using query selector all. So it includes 4 elements. If I say images.length, it's going to give us this number. So if it's smaller than 4, let's write here if condition. We are going to move our slider like that. If it's not, I'm going to copy here, but this time I'm going to turn back to initial position. So it's going to be 0 pixel. And in this case, our slider number will be 1 again. Let's see. I will click, 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 and one more, as you can see, the first image. But we don't have any animation here. Let's give. I'm going to open my CSS. And for this slider, I'm going to say transition effect. And for any animation, for transform, for opacity, for background color, doesn't matter. It's going to take 1 second. And we can give any timing function here. Basically, it's going to give an effect. So it will start slowly. Let's see, I'm going to refresh. As you can see, perfect. Let's refactor our function. Firstly, I'm going to create here a length. And it's going to be our image's length. We can use this. So I can delete here. And for this operation, I can create another function. Let's say const next slide. And it's going to return this. So I can delete here and say next slide. I can do the same thing for this one. Let's duplicate this and paste here and change the name. Previous slide. I'm going to use it here like that. And I can delete this if statement. It looks really long. Instead, I can use question mark and column here, like that. If it's smaller than our length, run the next slide. If it's not, run this function. Let's see. As you can see, it works as we expected. Perfect, and it looks much better right now. So let's do the same thing for the left click. I'm going to create a function, previous slide, and actually it's going to be not previous slide, it's going to be get first slide. Okay. Let's create our left event listener. I will say click. And I'm going to apply exactly the same logic. I will say if it's the first slide, when I click here, it's not going to move to right side. It's going to show us this last element. So let's create our function here. Get last slide. And what I'm going to write here, remember, for this last element, we are going to move our slider 800 multiplied by 3. Basically, if I say length -1 and multiply by 800, it's going to show us the last element. Let's create here our logic. I will say if slide number is bigger than 1, we are going to show the previous image. If it's not, we are going to call this last slide. And in the middle, we are going to need the previous slide. Let's create here and paste. Okay, so what we are gonna need here? Let's see. Let's say we are in the second image and its position is 800 pixels. Basically, when I click here, it's gonna be 0 again. And if we are here, it's 1600. When I click here, it's gonna be 800. In this case, our slide number is 3. We can basically calculate here 1600. When I click, it's gonna be 800. And the difference is 800. And remember, our slide number is 3. If I say slide number minus 2 multiplied by 800, we are gonna reach this number. If you are not good at math, it can be a little bit confusing for you, but actually it's not. If you are confused and having problem to calculate these kind of things, just take a notebook and write your variables as I explain you here. You can think like, okay, I'm in the first slide. When I click, the position will be 800. Second slide is gonna be 1600. And after that, you can try to calculate what you are gonna need. Okay, I'm gonna come here and say slide number minus 2. I will click. I forgot here, minus. Okay, we are choosing the last image. If I click, we are gonna see the third image. Okay, it doesn't work. Of course, this time we are gonna decrease this number. And for this one, it's gonna be our length. That's because when we move our slider, we are gonna see the last element, and the last element is the third item. And when I click again, we are gonna decrease this slide number. It was 4 and it's gonna be 3. Like that. 2 and first one. Perfect. It works. So what about those buttons? Let's create our buttons inside this bottom div. To do that, I'm gonna choose bottom div here. And paste here. But this time it's gonna be only query selector. That because we have only one bottom div. And after that, for each image, I'm gonna create different buttons here. In this case, we are gonna be using our image length. To do that, we can use for loop here. I will say I equals 0. It's gonna be smaller than our length. And after each operation, I'm gonna increase this number. So basically, we are gonna inside this loop 4 times. 0, 1, 2, and 3. In this case, we can create our divs 4 times. So let's create our div. I will say div. We are gonna be using document and create element. And we are gonna be creating div HTML element. You can create whatever you want here. But in this case, it's gonna be div. And we can give a class name for this div. If you remember, its class name is button. I will say class name equals button. And I'm gonna add this div into my bottom div. I will say bottom and append child this div. As you can see, they are here. Perfect. Let's choose those buttons and create event listener for each of them. I will say const buttons, query selector, all, that because we have 4 buttons. I'm writing here that because we are creating our elements here. If you choose buttons at the beginning, it's not gonna work. Be careful. And at the beginning, I want to give a background color for this first element. That's because when we open our website, we are gonna see the first image. To do that, we are gonna be using the first element, and I will say style and background color. And I will say white. By the way, it's a class name, it's gonna be dot. Let's see. As you can see, it's white. By the way, I will give cursor pointer for them. Okay. And what I'm gonna do, for each element, I'm gonna create an event listener. To do that, we are gonna be using for each. And for each button, we are gonna create our event listeners. Add event listener is gonna be a click method. And when I click them, I'm gonna run this function. And in this function, we are gonna change our slider. When I click here, we are gonna see the first image, second, third, and fourth. Basically, we are gonna need those buttons indexes. If you are using for each or map, you can use their indexes. Let's say index. In this case, for the first item is gonna be 0, 1, 2, 3. But when it's 0, the slide number will be 1. So basically, I should increase this number. Let's move our slide. I will say slider.style transform translate x. We are going to be using this index here and multiply by 800. In this case, for the first element, 0 multiplied by 800 is going to be 0. For the second one, 1 multiplied by 800 is going to be 800. So it will work like that. There's a typo here. Let's see. I will click. As you can see, it works as we expected. But how we are going to change those backgrounds? Basically, when I click here, it's going to be background color white. But there is something important here. I should delete this background color for the first item. To do that, we can create a function here. Let's say const reset background. And again, I'm going to take each buttons. I will say buttons for each. And I'm going to give a style. And their background color will be transparent. Let's call it here. As you can see, but at the same time, we should give background color for this one. I will do exactly the same thing. But this time, of course, it's going to be button. Like that. Perfect. It works, but actually there is a problem here. When I click, as you can see, I had to click 2 times. That's because we are not changing our slide number here. So I should come here and say slide number equals, remember our index starts from 0, but at the beginning our slide number is 1. So it's going to be +1. Right now, I can use those arrows, but this time we are not changing those background colors. To do that, I'm gonna take them at the beginning. That's because we are gonna be using those event listeners. And I'm gonna paste here. And after each clicking, I'm gonna reset my background colors and give a background color for a single button. Let's do that. For the right click, I will say reset BG and give a background color for slide number is bigger than our index. So I'm going to say -1. Of course, buttons. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's see. Perfect. Of course, you can create a function for that and call them here. Let's actually do that. Change color. Okay, awesome. I hope you understood the basics. It's a really small application, but it includes every basics of vanilla JavaScript. How to give style, how to give HTML elements, click events, loops, for each methods, I think it's an essential project for every JavaScript developer. Okay, let's create our second project. Okay, let's close everything here and create our quiz application. I will say quiz.html, CSS, and JavaScript file. Okay, I can close here and create my document. And let's change here, quiz project. And quickly, I will just include my style file and JavaScript file. Quiz.js. Okay, let's see what we are gonna have. We are gonna have this background color and we will center everything again. It's exactly the same thing as we did before. I will say body. Background color is gonna be this dark blue color. Display flags, align item center, justify content center. I just centered everything. And after that, we are gonna create this container, but before, as you can see, we are gonna be using different font family. I'm just gonna use Google Fonts. If you go to fonts.google.com, you can see font families and you can choose any font family you want. I'm using OpenSense and we are gonna be using this link. Of course, to use this font family, I should paste here. Like that. Let's see actually. I will open with live server. And as you can see, this font family looks much better than the default one. Okay. Let's create our container. And inside this container, we are gonna have this game div, which includes question, answers, and this submit button. And at the end of the game, we are gonna have this result page. Let's create our container and those divs. I will delete here. I will say game and result. And in this result, we are gonna have this title. Let's say h1 tag. Correct answers. Let's say correct as a class name. Wrong. What else? We are gonna have this score. Let's say h2 and score. Of course, we are gonna change them, but for now, to give any style, I have to create them. And finally, this play again. It's gonna be a button, play again. Of course, class name, let's say play. Okay, what about this game container? Basically, we are gonna have two sections, as we did in the previous project. This main content and this answer. Let's come here and say content and submit button. And inside this content, we are going to have our question here. h1. I'm going to give a class name. It's going to be question. And after that, we are going to have 4 answers here. So I can create a div here. Let's say answers. And it's going to contain each individual answer. So we are going to have an input here. And its type will be radio. It's going to give us this radio button. So we can choose any of them. Of course, we are going to create those texts as a label. And as you can see, it says HTML4. Basically, its reference will be our input here. Let's give an ID. Let's say answer 1. And it's going to include a value. I will make here true or false. Let's say false answer. And HTML4 will be our ID here. Let's write here an answer. Answer 1. Let's create others. Answer 2, 3, and 4. Of course, we are going to create them using our JavaScript. but for now, they're gonna be like that. Okay, it's ready, I think. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is to hide this result div. That's because when we open our app, we are gonna see only our game. And when we finish our game, finally we are gonna open up this and close our game div. I will say display none. As you can see, it's not here anymore. Let's give a size and background color for our container. Again, 800, 500. I'm gonna say background color white, like that. What about this button? I wanna move this at the end of the div. To do that, we can use position absolute. Let's say submit button. I'm gonna give a background color first. Let's say this purple color, and text color will be white. I'm gonna delete its border. Like that. I can give padding, cursor pointer. I can increase width and height. Width will be 100% and height will be 50 pixels. Let's give cursor pointer. Okay, it looks nice actually. We don't need any padding. So let's use position absolute and move it here. I will say position absolute. And its position will be bottom 0. But if I do that, as you can see, it appears here, but I want to see it in the parent div. To do that, I will go to the parent div and say position relative. As you can see, it's here right now. And what about this content? Let's say content. I'm just gonna give a padding here. I can increase this question font size. Okay, and for these answers, 24 pixels. I'm gonna give a space between them. I will say margin bottom. Let's change this color. It's gonna be a little bit softer. Okay, so we can choose any answer here. But as you can see, there is a mistake here. That's because I can choose multiple answers. To prevent this, I'm gonna give a same name property for each answer. What I mean by that? I'm gonna choose my inputs and I'm gonna come here and say name, let's say answer or whatever you say. And in this case, I can choose only one answer. Perfect. Let's design our result component also. After that, we can open up our JavaScript. So what I'm gonna do, I will come here and say game display none, but this time it's gonna be open like that. So let's give a padding here and center our texts. Let's say 50 pixels, text align, center. Of course, you can use display flags also, but it looks okay. Let's increase this h1 tag font size. I'm gonna be using my class name and I will say h1. That's because we didn't give any class name for this h1. Let's see. So you can use it like that. 50 pixels. And for the correct span, I'm gonna say green. And for the wrong span, it's gonna be red. And remember, we have a button here, which is play. Color will be white. I'm gonna change background color. We are gonna be using purple. I'm gonna give some padding between top and bottom, and left and right. And finally, cursor pointer. Okay, perfect. I can delete this border, by the way. Our design is ready. Right now I can close my result page and open up this game container. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, Firstly, I'm gonna create my questions and their answers. To do that, we are gonna need an array. I will just copy and paste here, like that. As you can see, each data includes a question and its answers. And inside this answers array, we are gonna have our texts, and we are gonna check whether they are true or false. Like that. We have 3 questions. And after that, I'm gonna choose my HTML elements. We are gonna need this game screen, results screen. We are gonna change this question. We are gonna add different questions for this answers container, this submit button, and finally, this play a game button. Let's choose them. Const, let's say game screen. Document query selector, and remember our class name, it's just game. And for others, it's gonna be result screen, question h1 tag, answers, it's an answer container, submit button. Actually, let's write here answers container, that because we have answers here also. I don't want to see any conflict. And finally, play button. Okay. Firstly, when we open our application, we are gonna see the first question. And when I submit, we are gonna see the second one. Since we are using here an array, we can define question index. The first item is index 0, 1, and 2. Let's write here question index. At the beginning is going to be 0. In this case, we will be able to choose the first element. If I say data and question index, it's going to give me this first item. And for each question, we are going to increase this. And what else we are going to need? Correct answers count is going to be 0. Same thing for wrong answers. And it's going to be our score. And finally, when we choose any answer, we are going to store its value. Remember, one of them is true and others are false. And when we choose any of them, we are going to assign our selected answers here. Like that. I can delete here. It's going to be true or false. Okay. Firstly, I'm going to create a function that shows a question here. Let's say const show question. I'm gonna write here question number, and according to this question number, we are gonna fetch any question here. Of course, at the beginning, it's gonna be this question index, which is 0. So let's change our question title here, this h1 tag. I'm gonna be using question, and I will say text content, and it's gonna be data, and we are gonna be using our question number and its question. For example, data 0 and its question, data 0 and its question. In this case, we don't need this text anymore. We are gonna write it using JavaScript. I will delete, and let's call our function. Remember, question number will be this question index. And as you can see, it's here. Right now, I can delete those answers. That's because we are going to create them using JavaScript. By the way, I can take one of them. I will copy. And after I can delete. That's because we are going to use it. I will come here and say answers container, and I'm gonna use here inner HTML. Basically, you can write any HTML element here. Of course, like the previous example, you can create a new div answer, and you can create input and put inside answer, create label, put inside, and finally put every answer inside this container, but we don't need to do that. Using inner HTML, we can add it quickly. So let's map through those answers and create our div. I will say data, question number, and answers. And I'm gonna map through these answers. Let's say item and its index. And it's gonna return our div here like that. I'm using map here, not for each, that because we are returning a result. We are not writing any function. And let's change this ID. It's gonna be our index. And I'm gonna change this value. It's gonna be item dot is correct. Remember, they are here. Item dot is correct. And finally, I'm gonna write here their texts. Item dot answer. Like that. Okay, they are not here. Of course, we are gonna return it like that. Not a function. Okay, they are here. But there's a problem here. It adds those commas that because we are using an array, and if you map through your arrays, it's gonna print them like that with a comma. To prevent this, I will come here and say join an empty string. In this case, we are not gonna see those commas. And okay, right now I can select any answer inside this function. Let's say select answer. Let's create this function here. Const select answer. And I'm gonna choose each input here and create a click event. So we are gonna see which input we are choosing. Let's do that. Firstly, I'm gonna select all inputs. If you remember, we have answers container. I can use it. Of course, you can use document and query selector, but also you can use its parent. So I'm gonna choose inputs here. I can directly give an HTML element instead of class name like that. And I will say for each element, I'm gonna create event listener. It's gonna be click event. But how we are gonna reach the value of these radio inputs? To do that, we are gonna be using event here. And if I say console log event target value, we are gonna see the answer. Let's see. I will click. As you can see, it's false, 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 and true. We have our value right now, so I can update this selected answer. And it's gonna be equal to our value. Okay, right now we have our selected answer. We are ready to submit. Let's create a function, and after that we are gonna create click event listener. And when we click, if our answer is correct, we are gonna increase this correct count. If it's wrong, we are gonna increase this one. And finally, we are gonna increase our question number and show the other question. We are gonna understand better right now. I will come here and say const submit answer. I'm gonna choose my submit button and add event listener and a click event. And I'm gonna write a condition here. I will say if selected answer is correct, I will say true, increase correct count like this. If it's not, if it's false, increase wrong count. And finally, we are going to increase our question index and show a new question using this index. In this case, it's going to be 1. When we say show question 1, it's going to choose other question and show its texts. Okay. Let's do that. I will choose this one and submit. It's not working, that because we didn't call our function. Let's call it here. As you can see, second question. But there is something important here. If we don't choose any answer, we can still see the next question. To prevent this, I'm going to write here another condition. I will say if selected answer not null, you can apply this process. If it's just alert here, select an answer. But at the beginning, as you can see, it's not null. I can make it null here, but in this case, when we choose the other question, it's going to have a value. That because when we change any answer here, we just assign here true or false. So I shouldn't do this here. I should do this here. It's going to be null. So in every question, our answer will be reset. Okay. Of course, not select answer. It's a function selected answer. Let's check here. Okay. I will save and let's see. I'm gonna submit. As you can see, select an answer. But if I choose any of them, I can see the next question. By the way, let's close here. Okay. If I choose this one, and remember, this is the last question. If I submit, as you can see, it's not going anywhere. That's because we don't have any question anymore. So what I'm gonna do is to show my result page. Let's create here. Show result. And remember, our result page is display none. Okay, this is game. This is result. Right now, I'm gonna change this display, but this time it's gonna be display none. Let's do that. I will say result screen and its style, and display will be, let's say, block. Another one will be none game screen. Let's test it. I'm gonna write here a condition. I will say if question index equal our data length, we can return this function. So it's not gonna run here. Let's see. I'm gonna choose any of them. And it's here. So let's update them. If I say result.querySelector, this correct class, I will be able to change this item. So let's delete them. I will come here and say result screen.querySelector correct, and I'm gonna change its text content, and it's gonna be correct answers and our count here, correct count. I will do the same thing for wrong and score. Let's separate them. Wrong answers will be wrong count. And finally, what was the name? Score. And it's going to be score. And I'm going to make a calculation here. It's a really basic calculation. I'm just going to say correct count minus wrong count and multiply them by just 10. It really doesn't matter. Okay, let's see. I don't know the answers, but as you can see, correct answer, wrong answer, and minus 10. And when I click this button, I'm gonna reset everything and show my first question. Let's create here. Before this, that's because we are gonna use this function inside show result. So I'm gonna say const play again. Let's reset everything like that and show question, the first question, or you can say directly 0, doesn't matter. And when we click on this play button, I'm just gonna call this function. I will say play button, add event listener, click event, play again. But remember, we just closed game screen and open up this result screen. I will do the opposite here. I'm gonna close this container and open up this one. Let's see. I will choose. If I say play again, it's not working. Play class name. Oh, I don't need to create any of them. We have already defined here. I will click, and as you can see, the first question. In this example, we have seen how to use text content and inner HTML like that, and see how to use all these functions and logics. I think it's a great project to understand DOM manipulation, and if you already know JavaScript, it's a good example for refreshing your mind. So let's create the other project. Okay, I'm gonna close my tabs here and create my files. Let's say filter .css and JavaScript. Of course, I can create different folders for them, but it can stay, doesn't matter. I can do this for the GitHub repository. By the way, it's gonna be in the description. If you have any trouble, you can check it there. Let's create quickly our document, filter example or project, my link, filter CSS, and also Google font here, because I want to change my font family. And finally, script. And source will be filter.javascript. Let's create our container and let's see what we are gonna have. But before, I want to add this font family. I don't want to forget that. Like this. And container. Okay, let's check. As you can see, our container will be full screen here, and we are going to have two sections. First one will be this left menu and this content. Let's create. Inside container, I will say left menu and content. And inside this menu, we have this search input, a title here, some categories. Actually, let's create them one by one. I'll say input is going to be search input, and I'm going to give a placeholder and it's going to say search. After that, categories and categories container. Actually, let's say shortcut cats. And each category here, let's say span and cat. I'm gonna say all, casual, and other categories. And after that, we are gonna have this title. After these categories, h1. And finally, this range input and its value. So let's say price. And this div will include our price input. Let's say range. And I'm gonna give class name is gonna be price range. Of course, you can give here any minimum and maximum number, but we are gonna do this in our JavaScript file. And finally, price value. Let's say $40. Let's see, I'm gonna open with live server, and as you can see, it's here. And what about this content? I'm just gonna create a products container, and inside we are gonna create each product. I will say products, and let's create an example. It's gonna include an image. I will copy and paste my image. I just found it on Amazon, and I will say span dot name. It's gonna be our product name and price. Actually, we have same class name here. Let's say price text. Let's see. Okay, it's really huge. I will come here and say display flags, and I'm gonna give a padding like that. And let's give a size for this left side and right side. I will say left menu and content. Of course, you can give any width, but I prefer using flex. That because our parent is flexbox. If I say flex 1, and for this one flex, let's say 4, so it's gonna be 4 times bigger than left menu. Flex 1 and flex 4. Okay, let's take care about this input. After left menu, I will say search. I'm gonna give a padding. I'm gonna increase its width, and I'm gonna change this border. It's gonna be gray. Okay. And for this h1 tag, I will say 30 pixels. Font color will be a little bit softer, and font weight will be 300. So it's gonna be a little bit thinner, like that. And for those categories, remember, we have a container, cat. I'm gonna say display flags, but they are gonna be vertical, column, and space between them. Like that. And let's increase those texts. For each cat, I'm gonna say cursor pointer, font size 20 pixels, again 300, and I'm gonna give some padding. And what about those products? Let's add more products here. Like that. And let's decrease this product size. I'm gonna come here and I will say products and each product. I'm gonna say display flags. They are gonna be horizontal. Let's give gap between them. And I'm gonna decrease its width. It's gonna be like that. And image 250, object width, let's say contain. So it's gonna contain its width and height, like that. As you can see, they are horizontal and they are overflowing. To prevent this, there is a perfect solution. If you are using Flexbox, you can say flex wrap, and it's gonna be wrap. If it's overflowing, it's gonna move them into next line, like this. Let's make them vertical, this image and those texts. Display flags, flags direction column, and gap will be 30 pixels. I can center them. Perfect. And for this name, maybe 300. Okay, it's nice. Let's check. Okay, it's exactly the same. So let's open up our JavaScript file. Firstly, I'm gonna include my data array. As you can see, each array has product name, its image, price, and category. So using those items, we can show all these products. To do that, I'm gonna delete my products here. We don't need them anymore. We are gonna create using JavaScript. But of course, I'm gonna copy one of them remember how we are doing this. We are going to be using inner HTML again. But before, let's decide which elements we are going to choose. Of course, our products container to add new items, this search input, and we can delete those categories also. That's because I want to show you how you can get different categories here. In our example, as you can see, it's dress also, but we are going to return only one dress category. You are going to understand everything right now. Let's delete them. And remember, span, its class name is category, and our text. Okay. So basically we are going to need this container, and finally this range and its value. Let's do that. I will say const products container document query selector and products, and search input. Our class name is search, categories container, price range, and price value. So let's show our products. You already know how to do that. If you want to, you can pause the video and try to show all those products. So I will say display products or show products. And I'm gonna pass here our filtered products. Of course, at the beginning, we are gonna pass here this data directly, but after that, when we filter our items using these search inputs, categories, or this range, we are going to send different data here, and using this data, we are going to show our products. So I will choose products container, and remember inner HTML, and I'm going to map through my filtered products. I'm going to return my product. Of course, I copy paste, but I copied something else after that. So I will paste it like this. Let's take it back. Okay. And let's change this source. It's going to be product dot, what was the name? Image, img, its name, and finally its price. And remember, we are going to use join method here to not see those commas. And finally, let's call it here using data. And they are here. So let's filter our items using this search input. So let's decide which event listener we are going to use. Of course, it's not going to be click. When I write here anything, we are going to change our data. Basically, we are going to need our keyboard interaction. To do that, we are going to be using keyup event listener. I will come here and search input, add event listener. I will say keyup. Let's see what we have inside. I will say console log, event, target, and value. I'm going to open up. As you can see, I have whatever I write. So basically, I can use this value. Let's say const value, event target, and by the way, if I want to search for example, this super ocean, I shouldn't have to write this first letter uppercase. It can be lowercase also. And in the same way, I can write anything with all uppercases to prevent any conflict. basically I'm gonna transform them into lowercase letters. So I will say to lowercase. So even if I write uppercase and even if our product name includes uppercase letters, they are all gonna be lowercase. Okay. And after that, I'm gonna write here a condition. That because when we write anything and if we decide to delete everything back, it's gonna be empty. And in this case, we are gonna show all these products again. We are not gonna filter. So I will say if value filter our products. If it's not, display products and data again. But how we are gonna filter our items? I will say display products, but we are gonna send here filtered data dot filter, and I'm gonna choose each item inside this data, and I'm gonna check whether our product name includes our letters or not. So let's say if item dot name, but remember to lowercase, and I'm gonna be using here index of value, and it's not gonna be -1. Let me show you how it works. I'm gonna open my console and let's say const string equals Lama Dev. I will say as dot index of, and let's say D, for example. And as you can see, it shows my index number here. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I say L, it's gonna be 0. If I say V, it's gonna be the last element. But if I say O, for example, as you can see, it returns -1. And it means it doesn't include this letter. So I'm doing here exactly the same thing. I'm choosing this name, for example, this name, and I'm searching for whatever I write here. If I say Z, for example, it's gonna return -1. And I'm filtering here. If it's not -1, return those items. If it's -1, it means it doesn't include this letter. So we are not gonna return this product. Okay. Let's see, for example, this one, I will say Pro. As you can see, 2 items. Actually, it's exactly the same item. Let's see. Okay. Let's say 2, for example. And this Super Ocean or capital. Okay, perfect. It works. So what about our categories? We have categories container here, and using my products, I want to create each category here. Of course, the basic way is writing them in the index.html, but imagine we have hundreds of categories, so you shouldn't do this manually. Everything should be inside function. So I will say const set categories. And firstly, I'm gonna map through my data and try to take each category here. Let's say const all cats. I will say data.map and return me item.category. Let's see, console log all cats. Of course, I should call this. Let's see. As you can see, it includes every category. But as I said, we have duplicated elements here. So I have to filter this. To do that, I can use index of again and check every item here. Let's see. I will say filter. I will take my item and its index. And I'm gonna return all categories dot index of if item equal this index. And as you can see, it returns only one of them right now. But there is something more. As you can see, we have one more category here, and it's all. So basically, I'm gonna take this category array and add here one more item. Let's actually pass it in a variable. Let's say categories, like that. Of course, I can say categories and push, and I can add this text, but I want to see this category at the beginning. So what you can do, basically you can use spread operator here, like that, and at the beginning you can say all. Let's see right now, console log categories. And this time, as you can see, our item is here. So basically we said create an array, first element will be all, and other elements will be whatever inside these all categories. This is how we are using spread operator. Okay, so let's use this categories container and add our categories. Remember how we are doing this. I will say inner HTML and categories.map. For each cat, I'm gonna return a span here, and I'm gonna write category, and remember its class name is gonna be category. And also join. Okay, it's not here. Categories container. Oh, it's cats. Like that. They are here. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do is to add click event for each item here. And when we click on them, we are gonna filter our items. Let's write it here. I will say for each cat. Of course, you can do by using query selector and choosing each category here. But I want to show you one more thing. You can use their parents. What's their parents? This category container. Let me show you. I will say add event listener is gonna be click event. And let's take our event here. And let's see what we have inside. Event, target, and let's test. I'm gonna click here, and as you can see, it returns our child element. If I click here, so if I say event target and text content, it's gonna show me whatever inside this span. It's that easy, guys. You don't have to create for each. You can just use their parents. So let's delete here. And I will say selected category. It's gonna be this text content. And I'm gonna write here a condition. That because when we click on this all category, it's gonna fetch all data. So I will say if selected category equals all, display products and our initial data. And if it's not, if it's something different, we are gonna filter our data. I will say display products data.filter. I'm gonna take each element here, and I will say item.category has to be our selected category. So we are gonna visit each item in this data, and we are gonna check their categories. If it equals to our selected data here, it means this is what we are looking for. Let's check. I'm gonna click, and as you can see, only sports, dress, luxury, and if I say all, it's gonna fetch all these products. Okay. And one more thing here, and it's this range. As I said, you can give here any minimum and maximum price, but we shouldn't give here, for example, 0 to 1,000. We should give the minimum price of our products using this data. We have prices here. It's going to be the minimum number and the maximum number. So let's do that. I'm going to say const set prices. Let's call it here as we did for categories. And I will say const price list data.map. For each item, I'm gonna take item.price. It's exactly the same thing as we did for this category here. So it's gonna return us our prices, and I'm gonna take the minimum and maximum price. To do that, we are gonna be using JavaScript math method. Let's say math and maximum 2 and 3. As you can see, it's gonna return this number. If I say minimum, it's gonna return this too. But as you realize, we are sending our numbers like that, not inside any array. As you can see, there's an error. But we have price list here, which is an array. To prevent any error, I'm gonna spread them like that. As you can see, it returns. Let's do that. I will say const minimum price. It's gonna be minimum method, and I'm gonna send my price list. Of course, I'm gonna spread like this. I will do the same thing for maximum. And right now, I can change my price range. As you can see, we have our range and its value, this range and its value. We are gonna change them. I will copy this, and I will say minimum is gonna be minimum price. Using same way, maximum, and also I'm gonna change its value, and it's gonna be maximum price again. Basically, by default, as you can see in our example, it's in the maximum level. That's because I want to show each element here. And finally, I'm gonna change here. And price value will be, let's say, $, and maximum price. So we don't need this anymore. I can delete. We have text content, and let's see, as you can see, 200. And whenever I change here, I want to change this number also, and we are gonna filter our data. But which event listener we are gonna use? If you are using input range here, you can use input event listener. Let's do that. I'll say price range, add event listener, and it's gonna be input. I'm gonna take my events here, and I'm gonna update again this value, and it's gonna be event, target, and value. Like that. As you can see, minimum is 16, maximum is 200. So I can filter my data. I will say display products, data.filter. I'm gonna take each item, and item.price will be lower or equal to event, target, and value. Let's see. As you can see, it works. It's a great element for user experience. It looks really stylish, but if you have a huge e-commerce application and if you have thousands of products, I wouldn't recommend this one. That because in every point it's gonna fetch new data. But for small shops, it's a great option. So we can search for any item. We can filter them by categories, and price. Okay, right now we can deploy our applications. To do that, I'm gonna open up my H panel, and here I'm gonna choose domains and subdomains. And first one will be slider. I'm gonna create custom folder, and folder name will be slider. Let's create. Okay, it's ready. Right now I can go to the file manager. As you can see, this is our main folder, and inside there's a default page here. If you visit our page, as you can see, it shows this page. So what I'm gonna do is to delete this PHP file and open up my subdomain. As you can see, it's exactly the same page here. I'm gonna delete. And I'm gonna move my slider CSS, HTML, and JavaScript file. I will take them and drop here. And I'm gonna change this name. And it's gonna be index.html. So if I open up slider.javascriptprojects.net, as you can see, our application is here. By the way, I forgot uploading this image folder. Let's actually open up here, and I'm gonna move my image folder. Let's check. I'm gonna refresh, and perfect. Let's try. And as you can see, it works as we expected. So I can do the same thing for other domains. Let's come here and create other ones. We are already here. Let's say quiz application. And let's say filter. And I'm going to open up File Manager, Quiz Application. I'm going to delete this default page and drag and drop my files. We don't have any image. Let's change this name. And it's going to be index.html. And for other one, filter, I will delete and move my files. Okay, let's check. I will say quiz, and it's here. Perfect. And finally, filter. And this input works, our categories, and price. Okay, awesome. And as you realize, our connections are secure. That's because we are using free SSL certificate, and using different subdomains for different application is that easy, guys. Just create your subdomain and upload your files. It just takes seconds. And it's great that because if you have a portfolio page, you can create different subdomains for each project. It's gonna make your portfolio much more professional. Okay, that's all. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video. You can support Lama Dev by joining the channel or using the link in the description below. Don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. I hope I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.